Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 60. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, and commented. Those of you who have subscribed to the show and continue to listen on a daily and weekly basis, your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room buildouts from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength and conditioning profession. Coaches have relied on Samson as their top resource for all their professional weight room needs because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to save on your next order. And this week's episode, I am joined by Michael De La Pava. Michael, or MDLP, is a strength coach and owner of the Battle Axe Gym in Miami, Florida. Michael opened the Battle Axe's doors in 2012, and the invite-only gym is home to athletes of all various disciplines, including powerlifting, MMA fighters, strongmen, officers of multiple authorities, and military personnel. Prior to opening his facility, he has also worked as a personal trainer and social worker before diving headfirst into entrepreneurship and owning his own business. Michael is the host of the Battle Axe podcast, and his gym is the venue to some of the biggest strongman and powerlifting competitions in the Southeast, including Miami's Baddest Man and the Miami Throwdown competitions. MDLP is the epitome of a strength sport athlete, advocate, and enthusiast. He started his athletic career training in martial arts, where after more than 14 years and multiple Muay Thai fights, he shifted his focus to other strength sports. He played for 3 seasons as a prop for the Miami Tridents rugby team, all while training in both strongman and powerlifting. He has competed extensively in both strongman and powerlifting, earning such accolades as being former Florida's strongest man in 2014, as well as countless feats of strength, including an 1,000-pound tire flip, pulling a fully loaded fire truck, carrying a 900-pound yoke, and pressing a 200-pound giant circus dumbbell, just to name a few. Most recently, Michael has added Highland Games competitor to his long and growing list of athletic experience. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Michael De La Pava. What's going on, everybody? Today, I've got a special guest. We got the night cleared out. We got storms cleared out from on my side too. Miami is clear to go. We've got Michael De La Pava on the show.
Nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, you nailed it too with the swing and everything. What's going on, guys?
Hey man, I'm excited to have you on. I'm stoked to have you on. We got to throw with each other, and that's part of what we're like. Our libations for the night are too inspired by the last St. Augustine games. Hey, you've got a lot, though those Hurricane games, but you got a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff we want to get into and everything. But before we do any of that stuff, I first want to say, because I know it's coming up, and by the time this episode releases, it'll be past. Congratulations on 10 fucking years of the Battle Axe Gym. It's awesome.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. I can't stop stop smiling about that. I was trying to act tough about it, but I can't. Thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate it. It was May 19th, and next Saturday we're going to celebrate heavy. So I appreciate that.
I love it. I mean, I told you, I was like, most people don't even get to day one. And you told me, it was like, hey, I was creeping on it. And year 10 is the one I'm going to celebrate big. So that's awesome, man. Congrats. And that's part of the stuff we want to kind of dive into. But before we get to the gym and everything, first kind of start off, how did you kind of get involved in the strength game? Like, what sports did you play growing up, and kind of getting into what you're currently doing mostly to train now?
So I've had a pretty eclectic sports background. I'm one of those guys that I always chose the harder path, or maybe the stupider path. But I really started at martial arts at 14. I did Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee style. I was fascinated with that. That branched into Muay Thai. In my early 20s, I had 5 amateur fights, 6 maybe, six amateur fights. It's been a while. I was a Muay Thai fighter for a while. After that, because I was just fully committed. That's kind of the way that I do sports. When I do a sport, I really fully commit. Not so much anymore, but at least back then. So I did Muay Thai, and then I got into powerlifting and strongman. I'd watched those things going up on TV, and rugby. So I played and competed in all 3 at the same time. Like, in hindsight, it's fucking dumb. At the time, it felt really great. But I was a competitive powerlifter. I only did 2 meets, and honestly, not for nothing, but I enjoyed more coaching. It wasn't for me. I did not enjoy it as much. And then I was a competitive strongman. I played rugby for about 3 years as a prop with the Miami Tridents. And that kind of was a way of my sports going forward. Fighting was always a big deal. At the time, we did a lot of running, calisthenics. I didn't have the education I do now. So the iron game and the strength game was nowhere near as educated. We're talking about 15 years ago. So of course, now I look back and I would have been doing speed work and lifting and sandbags and farmers. But I really transitioned into powerlifting and strongman once I started to open my own gym. That I had always been lifting. I mean, we've been bros since I was a 14-year-old kid. But the transition into sport and demand to get stronger and bigger and opening a gym really forced me to get educated and start to really dive into real strength training, not just, squat, bench, deadlift on my own. And now we do competitive Highland Games where, I mean, I hate not being good at something. And it has been one of the most challenging sports since Muay Thai because of the skill level. And that's kind of where my training has now kind of surrounded itself, because Highland Games has forced me to be an athlete again, or athletic, where I'm being forward to high skill level training, very specific, dynamic work, a lot of, different planes of motion. And it's been refreshing. I'm turning 38 this year, so I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not an old piece of shit, but my body is. But it really is refreshing, the demand for technique. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm not done with strongman. And we'll get into it later with surgeries and injuries, but it's certainly where my training has gone now. And it's almost a full circle in the sense of the demand that fighting has technically, and the athleticism and the demand of repetition over repetition is coming back again.
That's awesome, man. No, I mean, that is super eclectic, to say the least, and to dabble in, not just even dabble in all those, but like commit to training, commit to like competing and putting everything you have into those. And it's certainly probably taken you to a point where all the experience you've had in one has affected the next one and helped you kind of increase your background. And I mean, the educational side, like I've been through all the models of like the bachelor's and master's and like all that stuff. Like it's worth shit when you don't have under the bar experience and you don't have like an education and actually like putting your nose to the grindstone and actually knowing what it feels like to like suffer under a bar and suffer like in training a little bit.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I went to, actually pretty proud too. I was the first person in my family to go to like a legitimate university, because we grew up in Miami, not having too much, and going to school with like dorms and shit was like Saved by the Bell bullshit to me. But having gone to a real like a big university, I went to Penn State, which I'm super. I don't mean to throw that like it's the shit. It's just what really happened. School has an incredible way of building sacrifice and commitment and doing shit that you don't want to do. And somebody like you that went to school and put time under the books, I think my opinion is that yes, it formulates the base of eating your shit sandwich. Because when you're in school, you're like, why am I doing this? And you kind of build that resiliency to do shit that you don't want to do. And even though you might retain 20% of it, but you're right. Once it gets down to being in the trench warfare, lifting weights, getting hurt, going to meet, those sweaty back fucking disgusting warm-up rooms where you're learning more in one meet than you have in 6 years of fucking reading books. Absolutely. And I would say it's like a 70-30, or maybe 80-20 kind of ratio. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I've committed fully to competing in that, in strongman, Muay Thai, Highland Games, rugby, and powerlifting, and really dabbling hard into those things so that I can experience that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think the two, they definitely complement each other. I mean, you need to have kind of a good educational background and some experience, especially if you're going to be coaching people and really like offering your opinion up, more so than opinion, but like kind of scientific backing, or someone's going to put their training and your professional opinion into matter. Like, you need to have walked the walk a bit, but you also need to understand what you're actually saying and not just saying it anecdotally. So you gotta play both sides for sure.
100%, man. And I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole. We can have like 6 podcasts on that. But I agree with you 100%. Walking the walk and living the life for sure I think I love it because I quote Braveheart all the time, but men and women, they follow courage, and you're not going to gain courage in the books. You're going to gain courage in the muck and the mud and the fucking real blood, sweat, and tears. Like, that's what people follow. And then it's your job as an educator to have your feet in the ground and actually make something that matters with education, but in the long run, yeah, trench warfare, fuck yeah.
I love it. Hey, so since the 10 years is coming up, I really want to talk about that a little bit. Like, kind of talk about the Battle Axe Gym. Because that's your baby. Like, what was the reason behind it? What kind of got you sparked into opening up your own training facility?
So I grew up a fat kid, man. I was a chubster. I was never not athletic, believe it or not, man. I was that chubby kid that was either picked first or last, and I would just smoke motherfuckers. Like, I was really good. My brother played sports for me my whole life, and it came to a point where I really wanted to at one point lose weight. I came back from Penn State in college and I was overweight, because all you do in Pennsylvania sometimes in the Midwest and is drink for 7 months. I mean, it's fucking -5. Fuck that. And before I knew it, I was like 270, 260, and not the 250 that I am now. And my Muay Thai instructor, he goes, "Hey man, do you want to fight?" I said, "More than anything." And he challenged me to lose weight. In like 6 months, I lost about 50 pounds. It was 2-a-days, waking up at 4 a.m. And, it wasn't, I had no idea what drugs were. So I was what, 23, 24 years old. If there were drugs, I was too poor. So it didn't matter. And that kind of started changing my life, getting fit, putting stuff under my own heels, earning something. And I come from a very athletic family. So it wasn't that, it wasn't that being athletic was something new to me, but I can finally see body composition training. I liked the way that I was perceived and looked at. I love feeling athletic and being fast and strong. And that led into where I thought that I wanted to do this for somebody else. And I ended up getting a job at a global gym, or 24-hour fitness, which is all over the place. And I was great at selling stuff, and they make you feel like a salesman. You don't really feel like a trainer. You feel like a salesman. And I eventually caught wind to that, and I hated it. So I put my time, fucking walking up to people on the treadmill and saying the bullshit and picking up dumbbells, and I hated it. I was fortunate enough to have my Muay Thai coach's gym. And as I transitioned into social working, because that's what I did right before I opened the gym full time, and I worked with senior citizens, which is a whole life-changing experience. I really fell in love with that process of helping people, especially once I did it on my own. And this was maybe 11, 12 years ago. At the time, very few people were making garage gym videos. The only person that was making videos then that I saw that I thought was intriguing was Elliot Holst. Now, what he does now, I don't want to talk about because I don't want to fucking talk about it. 10 years ago, when he was fucking normal, he had awesome videos. And it was very inspiring because he was just a normal guy that opened a fucking 1,000 square foot gym, had like mats and stones and kegs. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, my own gym. And that's kind of where I got inspired. I actually went to do his course, and no matter what, like regardless of where he is at now, I always credit Elliot and that seminar to change my life. I ended up being surrounded by other gym owners, garage gym owners, which again, 11, 12 years ago was not as, I mean, DeFranco and these guys, Evan Esch, very rare, and they were just going like, do it. And I'm like, bro, I don't know. And at the time I was social working, I was super anxious. And lo and behold, I thought this was the greatest thing ever. And I opened up a gym. I ended up, I cashed an entire check and I took out an American Express and I maxed it out. Super fucking Colombian of me. I was like, I got a log, a rack, I got stones from Rogue. I had no concept. There was no tie-in in there. I don't know. OfferUp wasn't around there. Facebook time. And it was just very difficult. And I just racked up and I did it. I paid my first month of rent. And I decided that this is what I wanted to do ultimately because I fell in love with the process of helping people. And I'm not going to paint myself a fucking or this fucking philanthropist. Truth be told, there's some people I just want to punch in the face. But ultimately, I relate training and coaching like farming. And this is something I brought with Dr. Pat seminar that I did with him in mentorship, Davidson. I think farming, like, for example, you can farm carrots. And you may not love carrots, but you love farming. And you will always farm these carrots for the rest of your life because if you love farming, you don't ultimately have to love what you farm or what you cultivate. And that's how I fell in love with the concept of opening up my own gyms. Like, I loved helping people get stronger, faster, lose weight, confidence. It was addicting to watch them do that, despite the fact that the person may do their own thing and leave, and that was irrelevant. And that's how I opened up the Battle Axe Gym in 2012. I sucked it up. I worked 2 jobs for about over a year. Ramen noodles and all that bullshit that, eating your shit sandwich. I did that for quite a long time. And now here we are 10 years later, making a pretty happy living off of it, man.
That's awesome. No, that's to see all the hard work that kind of goes into it and you thinking about the process and like finally like being able to pull the trigger and just like maxing out a credit card, doing whatever it is. Like, I mean, that's thinking about that or someone else in that situation. Like that probably is like even still nerve wracking for you, like to think about what you did.
That fucking credit card stayed maxed out for like 8 years, bro. Like, it wasn't like I between you and me or the listeners too, I wanted to do it my way. And it sure as hell took a long time. Because if I would have done it the way a lot of other people told me at the time, I could probably be making way more money a lot earlier on. But I would have lost sight of myself. And I refused to let who I am as a person doesn't necessarily need to reflect upon what I've created as a culture in the gym. And what that gym is, like you said, it's my baby. It's my battleship. That it does its own thing. And I didn't want to sell that out for nothing or no one.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Because I think most people would see or like listen to the conversation that we're having and see like, hey, I didn't pay stuff off for 8 years and I'm just reaching 10. Some people would see that and be super discouraged and be like, well, maybe I can go a partner with someone else, or maybe I can like talk to this company. But yeah, you're right. You lose yourself in the process for something that's going to be a quick kind of turnaround. And
yeah,
like if I love what you said about the process, just like it being farming. Like if you're really in love with that, then it doesn't really matter what it is you're making at the end of the day. And
Exactly.
it's the same thing goes for your gym. Like you really loved like what you specifically were doing, and you had a vision of what the gym looked like, and you weren't going to shortcut yourself in the beginning, not knowing if that same vision was going to be carried out unless you were the person like riding the ship the whole way.
And yeah, thank you. And I'm still that way. I was recently offered to have two silent partners. Again, I'm an open book, bro. It's not like I'm creating something like out of control. Um, to open up a great big gym, and they would fund it, and I would just be the face of it. I'm like, I can't do that because then I have to answer to somebody, and I just can't do it. It would change the culture. I would have to open a big gym and have 100 members and let anyone in, and the gym is invitation only, and I would lose that. So I wouldn't even care if I had to go back to ramen noodles again, as long as the gym keeps it who it is.
That's awesome, man. Hey, you kind of touched on it, and I know culture is kind of a big buzzword and all that stuff, and people can't really define it.
It is now, but I fucking promise you it wasn't 10 years ago. And I hate to say that I said it first, but it is now. But yes, you're right.
I think it's always been around, but now people are trying to actually put a name to what that feeling is and what that camaraderie and that community looks like. So you kind of knew it in the beginning. Most people would go in just like having silent partners or trying to get a means to an end to be a gym owner, like quote unquote, like this is mine. But you sought out to do a lot more than that. Like you sought out to build like a company and a community and like a brand that people can really be proud of. Like in that process, how do you think like you were able to stick to that and let it grow organically to what it is rather than just say, hey, I just want to open a gym and see what happens?
So that's a really good question. Um, so I'm a psych major. That was my strength. I went to school for psychology, and I came in with that mentality. I said to myself, the strength that I have is not necessarily the major. I'm not saying that that's my strength. Is that is my interest and my passion. And the psychology of things and the mentality comes from, being brought up a martial artist, that warrior culture, that militant mindset, that perseverance. I was bred in the ring. That's what my mindset came from. And I knew firsthand what it was to have your mindset change. And then physically. So I knew the culture that we had, and I always credit Wesley Carroll, my crew. Crew is the official term for your coach or teacher in Muay Thai. He is a major reason of why I am the way I am in many ways. And I always will tell Wes, and we're still very good friends. But he had said words like culture to me. And I knew that his gym was small, had a very few people, very hard to stay there. He was very, very tough. And going into the Battle Axe gym, I thought, this is where my strength lies. I wasn't as educated as I wish I was when I opened up. And truth be told, I look at myself 10 years ago and I'm like, oh God, like, hold on, now I would be like, hey buddy, like, maybe you should open up a gym. But I knew what I wanted to do because I knew where my strength, but more importantly, where my genuine passion was. And when you open up a gym and when you open up any type of business, I thought of just, you want to make money, then good for you. But I wanted to create something that I knew I was going to be in love with. And that kind of energy and that kind of passion is addicting. People feel it. You can feel when you're being bullshitted. I worked in sales long enough to know, especially retail. And that's kind of what drove that purpose for me. Is not that I didn't want to get educated or help people with strength training, of course. But I knew that the long-term goal of what I wanted to do with my life was to create these intangibles, to create something to belong to create an earn system, a dog-eat-dog, exclusive, hard-working shit that I grew up when I was in fighting. And I loved what I belonged to. I didn't like it. I loved it. And I wanted to recreate that in the gym setting. And this was before I knew about Westside, although I did not learn about Westside early on. And I said, wow, this is what I'm talking about. This 9 years ago, 10 years ago, let's be real, very few people knew about Westside Barbell, only the hardcore guys. And when I found out about them 10 years ago, 9 years ago, it's like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. And that was just an affirmation of what I wanted to build. And I'm very proud of them. We're only 950 square feet, man. And I have clients all over the world and all over the nation, and we've trained some stuff, and our shirts are everywhere. So that goes to show you that proof's in the pudding. The culture and the intangibles and the psychology and the mentality transcend space, and that's fact. It's not hippie bullshit. It's if you do something genuine because you love it, people fucking flock to that.
Oh, exactly. No, that must have been super reassuring to like really see like the environment and the atmosphere that West Side was creating and be like, this is what I've been saying all along. And but a lot of people try to copy the model rather than be passionate about creating their own kind of version of it. And
Right.
and then that's where people fail. And I think if you're like, to your point, if you're passionate about something and you feel like you have some areas of weakness, or like education is something that you're not like, it's not your strong suit, like if you're passionate about what you're going to do, you're going to go out and do that stuff on your own. But if you do the inverse and you go to like college, or you start putting your head in the book and you're like, I got to be educated before I can be passionate, it's like you're missing the point. Because that the passion and being genuine, that's what's going to drive you actually continuing to learn and actually like fucking maxing out a credit card and going to buy it, or following your dream. You can't do it the opposite way and hope that that creates something that you actually want to be bought into.
Yeah, mate. I know a lot of this stuff. It sounds cliche, but it's the fucking truth, And you really gotta love what you do. And I think sometimes people think the consumer or the general population is a lot dumber than they are. They're not. They're very smart. I think human beings are very capable of picking up those body languages and vibes. When somebody doesn't really like what they're doing, you don't want to be part of that gym. You don't want to be coached by that guy. And then you got a bunch of other gyms that I ended up becoming very aware. Back then, Super Training Gym, Elite FTS. These gyms started. Now it's every gym has a fucking culture, and I'm not dogging it by any means. I'm just saying it's really awesome to see where that's fucking come, because people are starting to understand that especially Miami, that has like 400 fucking gyms. Well, when everybody has $1,000 illegal bar and a Texas deadlift bar, what do you have to offer? What makes you fucking different? And it certainly isn't the equipment. It's the culture, it's the energy, and that's typically brought on upon a strong leader and a culture to that gym.
Yeah, and I think that's what's made some of the other gyms you're talking about too, like have sustained success, because they know that the other stuff can be copied or replicated or undercut in price, or pay for well-educated coaches or whatever it is. But people continue to go back and are drawn back to it for the people that are in charge, the people that really cultivate that culture and drive it forward. And that's why other people are drawn to those things more and more, or people like only buy from Elite, only buy from a certain company, because like they actually believe in them. They believe in the coach, they believe in the brand, they believe in what it stands for, and they like subconsciously want to be a part of it, even if they're not like in the inner circle.
Absolutely.
Hey, so with like some of the, like, obviously there's been probably a lot of like things you've learned along the way, mistakes you've made, or advice and things like that. But kind of reflecting back a little bit, what have been some of the biggest changes that you've kind of made in operating this and kind of running it? Because I mean, like from promoting or marketing to hosting competitions, like to launching gear, like to having your own podcast, like things like that. What really kind of changed the biggest between year 1 and 10? And what do you think you're going to keep doing continuously for the next 10?
Oh, that's a good question. So I had a very difficult 2017 on a personal level. That was a year of my back injury. I lost my best friend to suicide. And I only say these things because I've spoken about it very openly. 2017 was the biggest year for me. I believe that year is the one that made me a man. And I only speak, I, I'm not speaking for women or anybody else. I just know myself, and I know myself, and I know men. There's a year that's going to come into your life that's going to kick you so hard in the dick that you're either going to have to live the rest of your life as a boy or you're going to have to fucking man. And 2017 was that year for me. And there was a lot of reflection on that year when you're fucked up emotionally and physically. I was told I would never lift again. I was told that my spine injury was either surgery or drugs. I was very not connected until I ended up again working with Brian Carroll and Stuart McGill, life-changing experience. I was out of strength training for about a year. I lost complete identity. It was a year that struck me to my soul. And that year allowed me to look back upon the previous 5 years and see where I was as a coach, because the idea of being an athlete was stripped away from me. According to my sources, I would never be an athlete again, which was horrible. And I said, well, okay, what do I have here? I can be a coach. I'm a gym owner. I'm a leader. Let me dive deeper into what I'm doing right and to look back at what I think I'm doing wrong or could do better. And the biggest developer was that I had to be humbled enough to realize that I needed to not only coach people, not like how I was as an athlete, but to learn patience, which I'm still learning, obviously, like all of us, but to completely look outside of myself objectively and grow and develop a business that would shine when my body would eventually break down. Because a lot of people that own gyms and are, big athletes, they are the face of their company. But one day, your sport's going to come knocking on your fucking door, and it's going to take what you love away from you, whether it's a surgery, an injury, a life experience. And then what? When you can't squat 800 pounds, what did you build? What did you create? Who did you coach? What lives did you change? What did you do the business-wise? What kind of long-term goals did you set up financially? What is your passive income? Is this really what you're going to do? Because there's no retirement for motherfuckers like that. There is no 401k. There's no investments. We're going to work until we die in the gym, basically. Like, when you look at Louis, RIP, man, that motherfucker died. He worked until the day he died. That's what happens when you love the shit that you create. That year decided to really push me in that direction where I said, okay, I need to, become more communicative, create long-term communications with my lifters, better ways of orientating them and leading them. I need to create other sources of steady income that represent that brand. I had created shirts until then, but it really picked up the pace after that year. Maybe a year or two after that, I decided that I was going to write. I ended up working for PRS with Brian Carroll. So I was writing articles. I was learning how to create content. Thanks to him and PRS, I learned how to Instagram post things a little bit more organized. I wanted to create more avenues for me to express myself, because at the time when I thought my athleticism was stripped from me, I was like, now what, motherfucker? Like, now what are you going to do? And that year completely changed my life. And going forward, because this year has also been a great, awesome challenge, and so as the end of, but as you get older, all things are. I only hope to stay on this continual path of creating and accepting challenges for myself. I think that it's very okay to accept challenges. I think that it's a warrior thing to do. But I think it's also very important to create challenges, to create deadlines, to start new projects, to suck at something, getting into Highland Games, learning Olympic lifting at 38 years old, and starting to get better at these things, asking questions, asking for coaching, expressing myself, talking to people. I hope to never change those aspects of myself or my life, despite the obstacles that come my way. And I hope to see myself in 10 years continuously struggling to recreate and rebuild myself emotionally, physically, intellectually. And I know that 2017 is probably going to pale in comparison to what life has to offer me eventually. And after that year, I feel fully prepared because now I look at things like that as an incredible canvas to paint myself and my future for. So I that's kind of where I learned my fucking lesson.
Wow, man. I don't know how to come back from that. That's a lot of stuff that you've kind of had to undergone, and it's definitely probably changed you for the better. And it's unfortunate that of some of the situations and circumstances that kind of unfolded, especially like in 2017, to have it all dumped on you at once too is very
Well,
unfortunate.
it is. I wish I could tell you that I wish it wouldn't have happened. I've had really heavy podcasts and stuff and articles and one-on-one conversations at the end of a fucking whiskey bottle where I wish a lot of things wouldn't have happened. Actually, in January of 2018, my first week back in Strongman, I tore my bicep tendon, and I was like, I remember hearing it tear like a pair of jeans ripping, and I said I tore my bicep tendon, and it was a 135-pound stone,
Oh,
which is nothing. I mean, I've loaded a 420, and I took it well because of being a year of suffering from spine injury. I said, "Oh, bicep tendon's nothing." But I'm telling you this obviously not for sympathetic stories or anything like that. But man, these scenarios, looking back, as most of us do, it's almost like you're thankful. You don't want to be so thankful. You're like, okay, motherfucker, like I don't want any more shit. Like, please don't hand off a fucking dumpster fire on me right now. But you kind of have to take these as the best learning lessons because had it never been for 2017, I don't know if I would have made 10 years. Certainly not the way I'm making it now because I might have kept on thinking I was doing the right thing, being the way I was. And, it's something I talk about with my cousin often, and it's a hard pill to swallow, but I'm always going to be a better coach than I was an athlete. I mean, it's just the way it is. I'm a fucking great athlete, let's be real. But as a coach, maybe that's just more of my calling. My mother's an incredible teacher too, and it's kind of like those years have helped me kind of formulate that. But yes, it is, like recently this year, last 5, 6 months have been really tough, but it's weird, man. I don't know if I'm just a masochist, but it's more like I wouldn't have it any other way.
yeah. I mean, I think those things prepare you and they make you stronger for what you have next. And like you said, you're very ambitious and passionate, and you're genuine in what you want to do. And you're hard nosed as hell to know that this is what I want to do. So whatever's going to get thrown at me, like I'm either going to go through it, around it, or blast straight ahead, no matter what. But it does afford you a good opportunity, like as much as it's forced, to actually reflect. And I think like hidden within all that stuff, that's a great advice for someone else. Like if this doesn't actually happen to you and you think everything is just smooth sailing, maybe it's a perfect time to sit back and reflect and see if like there's an iceberg coming like right on the horizon, because you might be able to get out of it, but you're not going to be able to escape every single challenge that comes that way. And honestly, the best approach is to set yourself up for some of those challenges and fail fast, because you're not going to be able to prepare for everything in life, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100%. Like when it comes to intangible things or projects, I think it's very important for yourself to create challenges. Um, like fail forward, fall forward, like create these things that are going to really build your long term stuff. It's just positive obstacles that you're creating.
No, I love that. I love everything you talked about too, with like setting yourself up, because you make a good point, like with Louis and for all the other coaches in this position. Hopefully we don't lose any more like pretty pronounced ones like those. But I mean, you talked about it, like elite and super training and like DeFranco and Evan Esch, like those guys that have built their own kind of little mini universes, and they've they've created national and like some of them global like prominence just within their small little community. And to see the fact that all of them are still coaching is kind of crazy, but all of them also, like you said, have found ways to pivot and make sure that they're probably of the same knowledge too. Like they can't coach forever, and they're going to
Yeah.
need to have different avenues and different revenue streams, or kind of shift their focus, because I mean, those guys don't compete the same way anymore. So if you want to sustain that culture, if you want to keep that gym, you want to keep that environment going, how do you pivot? What's the next step? And I think all those guys, like for example, and like even Brandon Lilly and like some of the other guys in the profession, they've made a catastrophic shift, and that might lose some people in the process, but it doesn't matter. It's for them, and for them, their passion and what's drive them forward. And if they lose people along the way, fuck it.
I mean, that's to me. Nobody becomes an entrepreneur or a person that drives their own business because they're really trying to reflect other people's fucking opinions. And if you did, then you got it in for the wrong fucking reasons, and you're a phony. It's just as simple as that. Like nobody becomes their own boss to ultimately live in the shadow of others' opinions. That's bullshit. So when I see people make shifts like that, I'm like, good for you. As long as it's genuine, good for you. You want to fucking be a juggler or make balloon animals? Do it because you want to fucking do it. And I'm like really cool with that. I think that's great. Because fuck it. Like as long as you're not hurting anybody else or insulting people along the way. I mean, Brandon Lilly's a great example. You got a guy that fucking just literally was openly and admittedly a piece of shit asshole, because he says it, ruptured both of his fucking knees to pieces and made a life change. Like personality wise, morally, spiritually, physically, the way he looks at his life, the way he coaches, trains, and lives. Good for you, bro, because it's genuine to him. And, I know people that know him personally, and that's who he's become. And ultimately, that's when you're your own boss, you're going to have to kind of follow that path. And it's awesome. It's an example. It's a great example of what you said.
Yeah. And people will, same thing. You're going to lose some people, but if you're in it for the right reasons, the same thing will happen. People will flock to you for your new endeavor. So it really doesn't matter. But I like talking about you taking on new challenges. Obviously, like with all your training background, there's been so many new things that you've kind of thrown into the mix. And we talked about being able to kind of build on to the next thing. The new challenge is Highland Games, obviously. And you said even too, like Olympic lifting a little bit too. So
yeah,
what,
tough, man.
like stepping into a new sport and stepping into something where you have to challenge yourself more, like what was your mental approach, or how were you kind of evaluating and talking to yourself, having such high experience as strongman and powerlifting and Muay Thai, and knowing what you're athletically capable, but now you're in a sport that you're starting from scratch, essentially. How do you like mentally handle that, to realize that I'm not going to be at 14 years and punching guys in the face right away to, hey, I gotta throw against these guys, and like I'm learning as I go.
That's a good question, because ultimately I always found that sports is just an expression of who I am. And this is again after, like I said, 2017, because I identified myself as a strongman and typically the strongest guy in the room, and that was like my mindset. After that, I had a paradigm shift where I said, well, strongman is simply an expression, just like Muay Thai was, rugby, powerlifting, the bodybuilding, not that I'm a bodybuilder, but bodybuilding and training. And I said, ultimately, these canvases, these colors, these paints are a way for me to express myself to the world. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're here to be seen. We're here to be seen. Nobody goes to a fucking sport. Very few. Let's be real here. Glory is awesome. Winning is awesome. Doing well is awesome. There's nothing like hitting that weight over bar and hearing the fucking, look, my mouth waters, hearing the fucking, like the crowd roar, motherfuckers. Like, I'm really open about this shit. I love when I used to hit somebody so hard I can hear the fucking crowd go, ooh, like, we're athletes. There's a difference between the athlete mindset, that selfish, primal, self-driven machine, and then the guy that goes out and drinks after. And I love that. I love that aspect. And I realized that these sports also help me express a lot of other things about myself. Discipline that I have on as an athlete, different to what I have as a personal in my personal life. You open up a bottle of Jameson, you and me are finishing that motherfucker and then some. I get ready for a competition. I'm counting macros. I'm sleeping. I'm not hanging out with people. It's a way to show other aspects of my personality. And Highland Games has been that, because I believe, me personally, that I do well sometimes and many times with being shitty at something. I love not being expected to do well. I love, having to struggle for something and practice consistently and be obsessive and talk about it and learn what tacky, what spikes, what hammer, what fucking weight over bar, what gloves are you wearing? You saw me. I'm like, what do you do? What's that? What's this? I was one of the most talkative guys was you and me, because I'm obsessed about learning things. I'm like, how did you throw that? Like, oh, you do the spin? Like, do you do the South African? And these are things that an inquisitive mind that I like to have is only being expressed in a different plane now, which is Highland Games. And I love that, because it could be Highland Games now at 48. It could be fucking darts or golf or pool or walking. It doesn't matter. It really ends up being, how are you going to take sport and athleticism as a way of expressing who you are on a personal, conscious, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, level. And that way it never grows old. It never gets stupid. It never gets boring. And I've done a lot of sports, man. And I've done a lot of experimenting with sports. And it always comes down to, how am I going to use this sport while I can to express myself and enjoy it? And Highland Games is that, because I go on there, and 80% of the time I'm the strongest guy in the group, but it doesn't mean fuck. I mean, you fucking wrecked me. Not that I think I'm that much stronger than you, but I saw you throw that sheaf. I'm like, it doesn't matter how much I can deadlift. I was, instead of being mad, I was like, man, that was beautiful. Like, I want to learn that. I want to do that, because I want to be good at stuff. I was the guy that when we played Street Fighter, I was reading the booklet. I'm that guy. Like, I want to learn the fucking super moves, and it's just another way of expressing my Hadouken, man. Like, I'm into it. And Highland Games has been so perfect for that. And it's just, again, like Olympic weightlifting. I'm using the movements in Olympic weightlifting that are going to make me the better thrower. I don't have the mobility for a full snatch, but a power snatch from the hang and the high, excellent. Hang high pulls, push pressing, push jerks, those are incredible for me. And I'm going to milk it. And I go to CrossFit Soul and my boy Danny with a proper coach to milk as much as I can from this educationally and physically and athletically, because I love to learn. And that's good enough for me. And I believe that a lot of times when I see a lot of young athletes and stuff, and I'm like, hey man, and it's cliche, love the process, love the process. Yes, the process is important, but why the process? Why are you doing the process? The why should be because, I like challenges. I love to win. I like the attention. I like glory. I love to learn. I love to meet new people. I love to express myself physically. I love the power, the strength. These are very important to identify as an individual, and that'll carry you until your last fucking day. That's never going to get old because it's you.
That's a great point. Like actually identifying more so than just, hey, I'm purpose driven, but define exactly why, like what really drives your purpose. And
right. It's very easy to say that. It's very easy to say purpose, discipline. These are very hot terms, right? Like purpose, discipline over motivation. But I always tell my guys, I'm like, identity, bro. What's your identity? Identity over anything, self over anything. That's not you. Like when one of my guys asked me about something, I'm like, that's not you, because you're not tough enough. And if you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough, motherfucker. You're not tough enough because that's not you. You want to be a different person. Identify yourself first. Know yourself and use sport to identify these things and express it. Again, that's the psychology of things. That's the truth. That's why you see people take careers on for 2 years and then disappear, because it was never a good way for them to express themselves. Suddenly, the sport got hard. They couldn't do what they want to do. They're out. And that's, again, another rabbit hole, but that's a big player when you see that your purpose and your why have to be driven by identity of self and who you think you are, what you think the sport can allow you to express.
No, I love that. And I think knowing yourself too, and using sport as an expression, I think is huge. I think a lot of times, and I think it's a testament, and I can like actually feel that too, because when I was doing strongman, albeit when I moved like to California, there weren't a lot of opportunities to do it. And you kind of miss out on the community more so when you're training by yourself. And I found that camaraderie and I found that like enjoyment when I picked up Highland Games and I got to do something new. And I think you said it perfectly too, like with your personality, like, hey, there's going to be some days where I'm feeling like real nostalgic and like, what is my roots? It's probably Muay Thai. Like I want to go back to fighting. I just want to go roll. I want to go kick a pad for a while. It's like, hey, but I'm feeling like brute force. Like I just want to throw something through a wall. It's like, I'm going to go pick up the stones and I'm going to pick shit off the ground and deadlift. Hey, I'm feeling like really good about like my technique. Like everything is smooth. I'm going to start throwing right now. And you could draw upon all those things because you've experienced them all. You can coach them all, and you've been a kook in every single one, that now you can come in with some experience and you can actually like use it to your advantage if you go back to another sport and everything. And I mean, setting yourself up to have just always find something that you can express yourself in. I think that's such a big component that people get lost in the weeds of when they pick a sport early on and they feel like they're stuck with it and they feel like this is what defines me. Because I don't know if you're the same way, but I don't want like what I did in my athletic career to go on my gravestone. Like I don't think that's the driving factor. I think I'm able to express my personality. I'm able to express like how I feel, and I can use it as an outlet and I can have joy in it. But at the end of the day, I don't think one sport or one athletic adventure is really going to define who you are as a person. That's why it's cool to hear you do all these different ones, because you're not the same person you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you. I think that you can love many things in your life. I don't think love is a single dimensional thing. You can love more than one person. You love two parents. You love them differently. You love two grandparents. You love 2, 3 brothers, or 5 or 6 or sisters, whatever. To say that you love one single thing in your life, that's 0.01% of the world. So how can you love one sport? Now, I could tell you with my whole entire heart that nothing will ever replace Muay Thai for me. That is the love of my life for sports. But when you do something and you love something, you should approach it with your whole heart, whether it's for 2 months or 3 years, because it's true. Let's look at this at a human factor. Some people who are in a 1-year relationship may love more than anyone that's been in a 10-year relationship. I've seen it personally. Who am I to tell that the person that was in love for a year loves less than what the people that love for 10 years just because they were together? How many empty fucking relationships have you seen? So when I see people that are in the sport for a year, whether it's fucking Thai or powerlifting, whatever, I'm not questioning whether they love the sport per se. I'm asking them if they got in for the right reason, and are they really loving what they want to do, or are they doing it because it's a fad, or they're following somebody else into it? And it's very easy for all of us to identify who's who. But when you do a sport, you give it its opportunity, whether it's for a year or 5, but love it with your whole heart. Commit to it. The community, the culture, the wording, the education, the history of the sport, the fucking competitive battlefield of it. Getting out there and fucking yourself up and really going. So that when you leave that sport or that relationship with sport, you said, hey man, I loved you to the bitter end, because You know how it is. When you're in a sport, it's a relationship. It's like you are in a fucking relationship. You have arguments, you have fights. They hurt you, you hurt them. You forget about it. You miss dates. You do another sport. It's a relationship. Like, let's be real. Human endeavors and the relationship with things that they love, whether it's hobbies or passion, is a big deal. And when you do it with your whole heart and you commit to it, those are the things that's when you can move on to another sport and be like, I did my part. Like, I have no regrets on rugby or powerlifting because I get it when I did it, and it was not for me. And we had our breakup, and we moved on. And I educated myself, and I did that. And I tell a lot of guys that come into sport, guys and girls, I'm like, especially when they come to my gym, like, I want to do strongman. I'm like, why? Why? Because you saw World's Strongest Man. Like, what do you want to fucking do this? They're like, oh, I think it's cool. I'm like, you're not gonna lie. I'm that guy. I'm that coach. I'm like, you're not gonna fucking do this. You're gonna come here for 6 months. You're gonna be a fucking pussy about it. Tell me the truth. Oh, I think I'm like 1 out of 10 of those guys stick around. But that one guy, I have guys that have been in the sport for a year or two that are gonna do it till they die because it's so genuine. It's such a good way of expressing themselves because they want to search courage. You know, I see these girls walk in there who can't even squat a barbell, and they're like, I want to do yoke, and they're still there. So it goes to show you that when you do something and you want to love something, you just don't give up on that. You run it, it runs its course. You run it to the fucking end. It's something I always say, like, you don't give up on something you love. You run it unto the fucking ground. So there's nothing left to love. Like, that's my personality type, that's my philosophy. When you love something, as I always say, I love aggressively, dog. I'm like, I will love you into the fucking ground. And once we're done, okay, we had our good time. I'm gonna go about my next life. And that's why doing Highland Games, I always said it. I said it in a podcast recently, and I was like, I don't love the Highland Games yet. I'm not in love with it. I'm exploring options. I'm asking questions. I'm getting to know people like you. I'm getting, like, we have conversations, Nick. I'm like, hey, teach me, let's talk. You know, how did you do that? I'm opening that opportunity because I do want to love it one day. I just still love strongman. I'm not done with it yet because I will run it into the ground, or it will run me into the ground, like any typical fucking Hispanic relationship. But here we are.
No, I think that's a great point, man. It's giving it your all and really committing to it, but making sure that before you even start, like, it's actually genuine, and there's an actual genuine driving force behind why you want to get involved with it. And it's awesome to see, like, someone in a position like yourself and like a coach, or kind of like the gatekeeper for, I mean, you're the gatekeeper for the culture, for the Battle Axe gym, and for people that come in, like, the shift is going to be for the brand, for the community, for the culture of it. Like, it always comes from you. So if someone comes in that tries to tip the scales and is a cancerous to it, like, you have to make sure that people are coming in for the right reasons every single time.
That's why the gym's invitation only, man. I
No,
literally say the same speech every time.
Yeah, but I think it's great when you go through and you give it all. Like, you haven't found like a true love for Highland Games, but like, to see you talk to everybody there, like, to kind of question what people are doing, compare notes, and like when you hit that WOD PR, like how fucking hyped you were after the hurricane wind stopped. Like, that's awesome.
God.
And
Oh man, I lost my shit on that one. Yeah.
no, but
awesome.
that's the other thing too. And I think people lose sight of this stuff. And it's probably a lot of people you end up turning away from the gym, getting in for the wrong reason. All these sports, for the most part, like, and you could probably go back and count on it, for the most part, we're paying our entry fee. We're paying to get there. No one is really making money. I can count on one hand how many times I've been paid in my entire career. Strongman, Highland Games, college, like everything. And so if you really don't like it, and you've probably thrown against people, I've competed against people that they just look miserable. Get out, go do something else.
I can't stand that, man. I tell my guys, actually, a code of conduct that we have is if I tell my guys, I'm like, if you are that guy that says I want to go home, like, I will personally fuck you up. Like, you're not going to embarrass the gym wearing our colors and being that guy. You're going to be encouraging, respectful, and be disciplined until that fucking last whistle blows and you go the fuck home. I don't care if your fucking arm is hanging off. Because I've been in competitions where guys are like, oh, I just can't wait for this to be over. I'm like, why the fuck are you here? Like, do you want my attention? Like, do you have daddy issues, dude? Like, what are you doing here? You're just discouraging the rest of us like a fucking cancer. And I've seen it all the time. They're like, I don't even know why I come to these anymore. I'm like, I don't know either, guy. Like, why don't you just get a beer and watch, And again, this is self-pity, and you said that these are the same people that I would not last very long at the Battle Axe or anywhere in general. And I hate that. I hate that. And that's a code of conduct. It's funny you say that. That is literally a rule from staff. Like, I don't even, like, when I host competitions, I don't even let my staff have a bad attitude, because it's also discouraging when you're throwing or having strongman and the judging and people are like, okay, yeah, man, better luck. I'm like, why did you do this? Like, I feel terrible now. Like, this is like, it's fun. Yeah, winning is fun and stuff like that. But like, why are you here? And that's something that I 100% back you on, dude. Like, we paid to be here. We're building memories here. Like, at least have a positive attitude.
No, you have a great mindset with it, and like approach thinking about all that stuff, because those small things are cancerous, and they sneak in and they seep into what you're trying to create and what you've created and you're trying to sustain. And even like going to training and going to competitions, like that stuff weighs on people when you start doing those sort of things. And I've caught myself doing it, but just like for different reasons, and like reflecting on it, like what. And I thought about it. I was like, why? Like, you chose to be here. You signed up for this. And it's mostly stuff outside of it that's kind of seeping its way in and affecting it. But yeah, reflecting on all that stuff, like, come on. I don't know. But when you think about it, like, obviously, like, you're passionate about everything that you've done, like the gym, like that moving forward, your training, your coaching. But for you, when it comes to being an athlete, like, I know you're driven by new things and challenges and really kind of testing yourself when it comes to any sort of competition. But like, for you, what does like competing actually mean to you?
Competition is everything. Um, everything. From waking up in the morning to make money, to playing, video games with your friends, to actual sport, to self-competition. I am super competitive. I used to be obnoxiously competitive. I think as I got older, I got better at understanding things. Since I was 2, 3 years old, when we were playing Parcheesi, it's a very Colombian thing. I would be that kid that when I would lose, I would flip the table and my mom would spank the fuck out of me. I would throw the dice. I hated to lose. I will always hate to lose till the day I die. Even now, if you start beating me in pool, like, we might fight. Like, I had to walk outside. And I say that only because I believe competition really should be one of the most primal things in life. And instead of bastardizing it or shoving it down, it should be refined and identified as something beautiful, as a tool to push yourself forward. And that there's other options, like I said, self-competition, competition against others, competition against consciousness, competition against not only friends, which is fine. It's okay to be competitive with friends. It's a healthy way of doing that. And I think identifying these different layers of competition is everything. And to me, like I said at the beginning of this question, competition is really everything to me. It's one of the most important things in my life, like fear, which is a very negative terminology, but I use it as best I can. But these are tools in the toolbox. This is your arsenal. And competition to me, and being able to compete against somebody else, having competed against yourself for months, is probably one of the most amazing feelings in the world, because it is primal for a human being to beat somebody else in something. And we're lucky enough to live in 2022 where I can beat you in something, and that doesn't mean that you're gonna die or lose your land or lose your cows or lose your wife. It's like you're not losing your heritage. Like we just beat each other in something pretty fun, and it's again a great way to express ourselves and to prove to the world that we can stick to a plan. And I think sport is one of the most important ways of doing that constructively, where you can teach life lessons because ultimately in the workplace, in relationships, in friendships, whether you want to admit it or not, everything is competition. And you can look at that in a healthy way and take the better lessons from it, or you can do it in a very toxic way and they can just think you a complete asshole. But there's nothing like you and your buddies. You don't want to be the friend that's not committing the most. You don't want to be the guy that doesn't buy the beers or doesn't go to the show. That's competition. You can see it however way you want to do it. It's just a branch of something. And of course, there's other aspects. I'm not singular, like being a single-minded person, but that's how I see it. And to me, competition is one of the biggest gifts life can give you. And if you're a competitive person and you learn how to harness that as a tool and not as a cancer, you're going to be one of the most successful people in the world. And people love to see people thrive through competition. We love it from day one. There's nothing like seeing somebody else win at something, right? Since day one, from throwing rocks and beating up a lion to a fucking Super Bowl.
I love it. Yeah. I think you said it really well at the end, like harnessing it as a tool, because I think we've all witnessed when competition kind of goes way beyond where it should be. But no, that's where that primal nature comes out, and people get so caught up in the winning aspect of it, which is not bad.
Sure.
But there are definitely some times where it's like, this is much. But if you know how to harness that and use that as a tool and for positivity, and be able to use that in different aspects of your life that tie into sport or business or your relationships, that's a huge tool in your box.
I mean, it's just like fear, man. You and me can have a 7 podcasts on fear and the negative connotations of it, but how many times has fear given you the biggest PR of your life? So it's a tool. When you learn to identify it in the way that it should be, or it can be optimally, fear, motivation, discipline, these are all tools. These are all, to me, in my opinion, are masks that we have to wear at certain times. Should some take more precedence than others? Sure. I believe being kind and understanding probably take a lot more precedence than being a piece of shit. But sometimes you got to be a piece of shit. And it's a tool, isn't it? It's not like when somebody fucks with you and you punch them in the goddamn mouth, nobody's going to say anything because they're a bad person, but it's just a tool. It's just a way of expressing what needs to be done at that time. And that's how I feel about competition. And I'm super competitive, but I've learned over the years to use it as a tool and not a GPS, because when it was a GPS, it's what broke my body. It's what made me alienate myself from friends and family. It's what made me obsessive and distant because all I cared about was winning. And that's the dark side of competition, which is, if you identify it, it's very easy to understand it as a tool, just like a screwdriver. It's a tool, or you can use it for something really bad, like anything else in the fucking world. And that's how I see it. It's just all these gifts that life has given you for you to fucking get after.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. Hey, so with all the training and everything you have going on, obviously being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, all the other things that go on outside of just the weight room walls that you have to do, how are you kind of able to, I won't even say like balance, because we know there's no balance in all this stuff, but maybe like manage or juggle coaching on top of all these other things that you're doing? Because there's going to be times where that's got to take the priority. Like you have to put food on the table and everything too. So how are you able to train, like keep the gym lights on and then still be able to coach?
The worst thing that ever happened to me as an athlete is being a good coach. And that's the truth. And anyone that tells you otherwise is a fucking liar. If you've ever been in the position of being a coach and an athlete, anyone would tell you that that's the truth. Do I regret some stuff? Sure. Any man that goes to his grave without saying by saying they have no regrets is also a liar. But ultimately, it's probably one of the biggest gifts is being a good coach. There is it's funny because I talk about this sometimes with my nutritionist, Mandy. She constantly pushes the term balance. I call it the B word because I don't believe it. But it's a give and take. It's what to do at a certain time that needs to be done, right? Unfortunately, the better, higher athlete I want to be will always run into the wall of being a business owner and a coach. And I have to be very real with myself. What's more important to me, Nick? Is it being the best athlete in the world, or is it being the best coach in the world? 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would tell you that it's athlete, and that the coach would be just a positive consequence of being an athlete. Now, and not even because of my age or anything like that, it's just because I found such great passion on educating myself and being a better coach. So, and a business owner and these things like that. And I love creating content and changing lives and having a gym and giving a place to a home. So what I try to do my best, and I had talked about this in my mentorship program, is that I do seasons. And, you know, at the beginning of this year, when I was coming back from my tricep tendon rupture, I knew that competitively I was only going to go so far. So what did I do? I decided to dive harder into coaching and being a businessman. I had time. My body wasn't in the right place. I had a business coach season. Summer's picking up now and competitions are relatively low. It's a good time for me to be more of an athlete and less of a coach because I have time to train. I have off season. I can get into, you know, conjugate system. At the end of the year, competitions pick back up. Could I be a high level athlete at the end of the year, but also be a high level coach? Of course, yes. The answer is yes. But the price is very, very high. And since I'm in the quote unquote twilight of my athletic career, I decide that I pick certain days and certain seasons to do such things. And, you know, being a businessman is priority for me because that's what puts food on my table, feeds my family, it takes care of that. That never changes for me. That's always the top tier because as much as I love being a coach and an athlete, those two push that businessman up. The hardest part is the dichotomy. And sometimes it's almost like a juxtapose because it's selfishness and selflessness of the coach and the athlete. And those have to come in season. And I do that by communicating with my guys. If I'm getting ready for a competition, let's say in December, which I was for Florida Strongest Man, I talk to all my athletes. I'm like, hey, for the next 8 weeks, please be patient with me. I'm going to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more distant, a little bit more focused. I'm not going to be able to respond to you in 30 minutes. It might take 24 hours. Does my business suffer a little bit? Sure. Is it worth it? Yes. And it comes with being honest with myself and compartmentalizing and using these tools and when to do stuff. Communication, technology, you know, being able to express myself, my different platforms of how to optimize what I want to do at a certain time. And I've been very fortunate enough to be able to do that with my guys. So you're right. It's really hard to say the word balance when there's so many aspects and so many turning gears and so many little nuances to everything. But I think when you really operate seasons or blocks or phases, if you will, and it always, you know, translates so heavily to sports, you can be pretty good at a lot of things. Like I said, you can't be great at everything, but there comes a time, you know, for example, when I did those three weekends of competitions, my whole gym knew, all my clients knew, my world revolved around it. I made enough money that I can travel these 3 weekends. Like I formulated a plan. As soon as I was done, I haven't really got, Highland Games took a step down. Athleticism, I started to heal. Coaching stepped back up. Businessman took even more because, you know, Strongman, the competitions that I was hosting. So it's more about like scheduling, if I was to use a word, than actual balance. And maybe the balance is in the effort and the balance is in the perspective, but the actual execution seems to come like as far as scheduling and phases and using those things as tools.
No, that was great. That was eloquently put. I mean, that's kind of, obviously I don't have to juggle quite so many things that you're doing. And like for me, the amount of work that I put in doesn't necessarily change the outcome the same as you owning a business, because no matter if I spend 5 minutes like at the gym at work versus 50 hours, my salary stays the same. Like I'll probably get fired, but it's definitely not going to impact it quite so much because there's not a direct correlation with me doing more work, me doing more marketing or anything, just being in the college sector as a coach. But for you, like that has to always remain the highest priority, because without that, all the other things are null and void. They don't exist anymore. So for you to be able to put it in seasons, which I think is a great thing. And I've tried to do that in certain aspects, but you do it to even more of a degree because you're balancing, or not balancing, but you're trying to kind of turn on a dimmer switch to more things at a different time. But you're very forthright with telling like clients and telling people that this is what's going to happen during this period. Like, understand that this is important to me and it's important to the gym. And at the end of the day, like, it's the same with you opening the gym in the beginning. Like, you didn't see the payoff day one. You're starting to see it more and more, and you can reflect 10 years later. The same with this stuff. Like, you being competitive makes you a better person, which drives you forward to be a better coach, which in turn makes you a better businessman. And some people just don't see the correlation because it takes time. So I think how you kind of take that approach and schedule things out and treat it season by season and communicate with people so that you can still have all these different things to express yourself and really just feed into making ultimately you a better person, which makes you better at all the other things. I think that's awesome. And people should take cues for that have more hobbies or more passions that they don't ever get involved in.
No, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, so with now that it kind of is the 10-year mark and anything, what do you have any goals, or do you have anything like what's really next for the Battle Axe?
Um, so, I always thought that the gym would probably, one thing that an old coach of mine, Randy Scotes from Idolmaker, he's the one that originally taught me like West Side stuff. This was like 9 years ago. The whole model lift and all that. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. He taught me once, and he said something really important to me. He said, when it turns from I to we, is when you really know you've made it. And that stuck with me, 10 years, 9 years later, but 10 years from the beginning. I would like to continue the concept of we. And if it was up to me and I can completely disappear into obscurity and the gym can run itself with the culture and me not be anybody, and as much as my ego and how much I come off as a narcissistic fuck, I wouldn't love to just have a fucking cabin in Montana and be a fucking nobody. But I want the gym to carry itself so highly that it runs itself. Like, I do love, Louis Simmons and Elite FTS, and these are driven by symbols, Evanesh, DeFranco. And that when we go, they go, that the gym itself may disappear. My dream is that it's not like that, although it may be. And, I would love for this gym to be something bigger and more than myself. I would love for it to create, like I said, the culture, the brand that stands on its own. And the biggest goal for me in the next 10 years is to create a gym where I'm a part of it, that I'm not all of it. And that's my biggest goal, to educate my guys. I always say I'm only as good as my stupidest lifter, and to continue that. Because if they ask my guy why they're doing something, or they ask this girl, why are you doing log clean, and they don't know, well, it reflects poorly upon me, and it reflects poorly upon them in the gym. And that's what I want to see. Financially and fiscally, I'm very happy where I'm at. I'm happy with the money I make. I'm happy with the life that I live. I don't live too much. I buy stupid shit because I grew up not having shit. So I buy like shoes that I don't need and watches and shit. But I don't think that's ever going to change. I think it's in my genetics. But that's what I see myself, and what I would like for that. I'd like for my gym to stand apart in that way. And I think that we're almost there. and much more now than I was in year one. And maybe that may never be, but I would certainly try. And I want that for my guys, that even if I was to go or disappear, that gym would run itself until the very last day. And I think that a lot of people that create something, whether it's art or family or legacy, which I always love to see, is like we would love to continue to see that continue beyond our days. And that's the goal.
No, it's awesome. That's very ambitious goals, obviously. And you're right. It's definitely evolved from year 1 to 10 to what you kind of envision it being, even if you're not at the helm in the next 10 years, and like what happens after you kind of pass the torch. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same. It's like the same as West Side. Like, hey, like West Side dies when Louis dies. And so I mean, there'll probably be a version of it, and there'll be copycats, or there'll be people that try to live it on. And I don't think Battle Axe would ever be the same without you. Just like super training's not the same, like elite won't be the same, but it will still be a version of it. And the difference is like it's just the new version of it. It's like people that there's a lot of people, like I've read business books where guys that create companies, they sit in there for a while, and it's not a failure if the company fails. Like you got it off the ground, you made success, you made money with it, you had a vision, you had a future. Not everything lasts, just like you said with relationships and things. Like you got to move on. And there's some companies that someone just wants to get it off the ground and like be sustainable and pass it on, and you kind of see what happens for it. Nothing's going to be lasting forever. You just hope that what you did makes it as sustainable as possible, and that people find, I feel like if people find passion out of it and they find a purpose from it, then you really did as much as you can, because unless you plan on dying in that place, it's going to be a different version of your gym than what it was when you were there. And you just have to kind of accept it, I guess.
Right. I think, to piggyback on what you're saying here is, if this is really my baby, and I don't have kids, I don't want kids, but let's say you want the best for your offspring. You don't want I don't know. I don't have kids, but I know that I can say openly that I would never want my kid to be like me. I would want it to be better than me, smarter than me, stronger than me. Although I'm going to make it really fucking hard, but because I'm competitive, and I want it to be more successful. And you want that. And I know that. I mean, Louis always said that, when he dies, the gym dies, and that's fine, because Louis is also a crazy person. Let's be real here. But I can guarantee you that people like elite, especially Dave Tate, and I had I was lucky to host this on a podcast, and understanding him as a man, like you can see what he's trying to build here. He's trying to build something beyond his days. And when you build something, you want it to last beyond. I think when you do it genuinely, you want it to last beyond you, because you want it to be bigger and better and different. I look forward to that. Yes, as a gym owner and as a anal retentive, this goes here, this goes that. I can look at myself a year ago, I would throw a fucking firestorm if something was off. I still do, but with much less like anger now, because you want something to happen from what you created. You want somebody to take the reins and see what happens and what they can create with what you started. And I believe that now, 10 years later, I am more glued to that idea where, yes, obviously I don't want to go tomorrow. I would like to do this until my last days. But like you said, I would like to see it would be something different. And I welcome that, as long as it's earned and done in certain ways. And it's hard to say that, because, this is your baby, but, you ultimately want your offspring, your baby, your legacy, your destiny to be bigger than what you ever started it off as. And that's what I see for the Battle Axe Gym. I want it to be something where, and I know there's a couple of people there and a few guys there and girls there that would do so, that would probably do everything they can to make this gym run, and that they would sacrifice as much or more than me. And that means everything, because if you can say that as somebody that's built a business, that one of your staff or one of your people would pick up the reins and sacrifice life to make this run, that's worth 10 years.
Yeah, I think you did your job extremely well. If someone's going to be willing to carry that torch and hold on to those same core values, and you know what, like take it further. And that's the same thing you said. Like if you have kids, you want them to be better than you want them to be like more prepared and stronger and smarter than you want all those things for them. The same goes if you probably pass on a company. You still want like the essence of it to remain the same, but some of it's got to change because it's got to keep going further if you want that legacy to be there. And I think that's what drives a lot of these companies forward too, because they want it, like you said, to last longer than yourself. So when you want something to last longer and be bigger than yourself, there really is no there, because by the time you're gone, like you carried it as far as you can and someone has to continue it from there. So
Right.
no, that's awesome. And so for yourself, obviously, like you're pretty well connected and you're deriving a lot of information from all different types of sports. Coaches, like you have a coach for Olympic weightlifting. I know you talk to a lot of people for Highland Games and everything as you're starting to like pick up speed with that. Where do you where are your kind of go-tos for resources or coaches, like when you really are trying to improve on something? Or is there anything specifically that is like a go-to recommendation for people that are either trying to get into like gym ownership or strength sports in general?
That's a good question. So my biggest thing was always find somebody that you think is expressing themselves genuinely to the motive that you want to go to. Nowadays, again, when I came up in this 10 years ago, Instagram and stuff like that was so scarce. And maybe I was lucky that the few that were putting out content back then was because they really loved it. You weren't getting anything for it. You weren't getting a blue check mark or anything like that. And I don't mean to talk like an old man and get off my fucking lawn, but it's the truth. Back then, the 5, 6 guys that were putting out content just because they really wanted to do it. They really wanted to do it. I was very fortunate to come up with that blue collar mentality. When you look about it now, there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people creating content and do this and do that. And I think that the most important part is to identify and to observe what kind of content they're creating that's genuine to you, and then try to communicate. Start, DMing them, emailing, taking their courses, buying their seminars, getting to know them, because ultimately it's true, it's a business. Not everyone's giving away information for free, which was, 10 years ago. Back then, you could just email a coach and they would be more than happy to express themselves. But now, when everything's monetized, and I don't blame them, when a reel is making $1 or 100 views, time is money. And I understand the business aspect of it, but take their seminars, pay for their books, buy their ebooks, read their articles, go back in the past and read books that are very important to Super Training, No Sif, all these guys that are crazy. Read the West Side books and see which one of your mentors and people that are looking up to are quoting the past and are actually educated in the history of sport as far as biomechanics and the science of it, and are using that and almost not necessarily recreating the wheel, but spinning it in their own direction. And when I tell people this, it's like, ask questions, commit yourself, comment, DM, email, Facebook, be inquisitive. These people are getting paid to answer your questions. If they respond to you rudely, or they don't accept you at all, or don't that, then maybe that's not the person you should be talking to or accepting to. Sometimes the guy down the street with 200 followers is probably worth your time 1,000 times more than the guy with 150,000 followers and fucking an 8-pack. Understand that. Reach out. I'll tell you what. I had, how I got Eddie Cohen on a seminar? I DM'd him. I just sent him a fucking DM. He put something, and now me and Eddie are good friends. I have him on my fucking cell phone. I can text Eddie anytime I want. The greatest powerlifter of all time. You know why? Because I just sent him a DM. I didn't think you know what? One of the greatest human beings I've ever fucking met in my life. Humble, cool as fuck, a guy's guy. Do that. Never think that you're not good enough or that you're too good enough for something. And I think that's very important. Education, the way they commit to people, the way they answer stuff. Listen, I don't care if you got 1 million followers or 20. If you're left on scene constantly, or that says something. If go down to your local guys, and not everything's on Instagram, not everybody's on social media. Talk to coaches. Go like you, a college coach. I guarantee you, Nick, you probably have so much more information than you do have followers. And unfortunately, people don't see it that way. Just like me. It's like, okay, cool, 10K. So what? Like, so what? Honestly, so what? How are we talking? What are we doing? How are we expressing? What's our education? How are we responding? What are we posting? What are we reposting? And, now I'm not going to deny social media's power, but be inquisitive. Have no fear. Question things and educate yourself and be skeptical. And it's okay to do that. And honestly, if I can go, I was lucky enough to build myself up when there was nothing and see it evolve into what it is now. And I would tell any person that's trying to do this right now, do that. Go around your local city. And I tell this all the time. I know people that have 100,000, 200,000 followers and nobody knows who they are down the street. That should say a lot. You're this social media sensation, but your local community, your local gyms, don't even know who the fuck you are. That's bad. That means you're either a piece of shit person or you're not really fucking helping out your community. You're just a keyboard warrior. And I tell people that all the time. And that's one of many things that I say. If you got your buddy working down on the street, 100,000 followers, but hasn't helped anybody, talks to nobody, goes to no gyms, does no local meet. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world because, like you said, I mean, not being too much younger than you, like seeing all that stuff growing up and seeing all the information that was put out there, it really only got to you by the people that were really passionate about putting the information out, and it's circulating from like-minded people because like the internet wasn't super easy to kind of navigate. A lot of that stuff didn't get to you in an easy fashion, or you had old muscle mags, or you had like grainy videos, or you had to reach out to coaches or go see them in person. So the information that usually got distributed to people, however means you got it, was usually pretty good. And now, like you said, you have to be inquisitive and you have to be skeptical about all the stuff that's being put out there because people have a different agenda, like from followers or from anything. And before like this time and like how social media has gotten big, and like you said, yeah, I agree, it's powerful. But some people put too much precedence on it because now instead of naturally growing like just organically where, hey, I've got 10 people in my gym. Okay, well, now people know me in the county, in the state, in the region, nationally. Like well, now people like me in Seattle, but I live in Jacksonville. So I have 10,000 followers from Seattle. It's like, but no one else knows you from around it. It's a weird dynamic, and it's a double-edged sword because it's useful, but at the same time, I think it clouds people's judgment and it gives people a lot of clout, maybe undeservingly in the beginning, but those are the people in the profession that may move in down the street for you and be a competitor in the gym business, or maybe try to take my job in college. And I think you need to question those things a lot more and question the information you're getting too. And I think those are great points. And a lot of time you're going to vote with your dollar. So if you want to talk to someone who you know's time is valuable, like you better bring some good information, some good questions to them. And if you're not purchasing the stuff that they fucking put out there for money, don't be reaching for handouts.
Yo, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. It's like, yes, I understand that, to a certain extent, people at a certain level may answer consistently for free because maybe they're just so wealthy they've made it. But, it's like going to a fucking restaurant and going, okay, let me get a couple breadsticks for free. I'm like, well, you only get the free breadsticks at Olive Garden because you're going to order some fucking food. Because when you just order which is really great to get the breadsticks with their little pesto and shit and get after it, you better be ordering some food or they're going to kick your ass out. And that is also true about, education. You can't go to a professor and just sit in his class for free. Typically, you got to pay the fucking tuition. And give them the respect if you really respect them, give them the respect that you want to be reciprocated. And I think a lot of times people just kind of skip that step and go, hey, I DM'd them like 6 times and didn't answer them. I'm like, they're probably getting hundreds of DMs a week and they have no connection to you. You just want free shit. You know, and you got to be very real with shit like that.
It's crazy. No, I'm not at that level. So thank God no one bothers me that much. But maybe I do want to get at that level so then I can complain about it. I don't know.
Yeah, get off my lawn, dude. Get off my lawn.
Hey, so I know we got a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to keep you too much, but hey, we got like any good training session. All right, we end it with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and since you do so much other stuff on the outside, we're going to do an overtime question to finish it off. Okay. But you can go rapid fire or you could take your time on each one. But you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. First one I have for you. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning in general, and biggest influence in, or actually favorite athlete in general.
Oof, wow. So, man, you know, it's really tough for me to answer this one. I don't have a singular one. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning would probably have to be, man, one of the biggest influences in that aspect was definitely, I know I'm going to catch flack for this, but Mark Bell listen to me. I'm talking about Mark Bell 10 years ago, was a big deal because he showed me that you can just be a powerlifter and get after it. And create a business on it. One guy that I will mention too, and an honorable mention, is Randy Scotes. He's a local coach. He has no Instagram and no followers, and he put me on the map. He educated one of the most educated men I've ever met, and I've been around this business for a long time. He was a major player in strength and conditioning. As far as athletes are concerned, I mean, I really like curling. I'm just kidding. I really do like curling. No one really stands out in the sense of a single athlete. I hate to say this, but people like Tom Brady and Wayne Gretzky and the greats and the GOATs are very inspiring to me. I think people like that are always going to be great. And I always say people like Vasilis Lalas in Strongman and Jaakko Olo, they're one of the smallest strongmen, are always going to be a big deal for me. And yeah, that's all I can think of as far as major ones like that. Obviously, the major ones like, you know, Mike Johnson and all them. But yeah, those are the ones that really made a big impact on me. And I know that Mark Bell now, people are going to look at me like, you know, oh, fuck. I go, but the guy that he was 10 years ago, and I'm not dogging on who he is now, put a lot of paychecks on gym owners' laps when he made a garage gym and powerlifting pretty cool. And he made it possible to make YouTube videos and create a lot of product, and chains and barbells became cool because of that. And that helped me a lot, tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we talked about before. He found a different avenue. So
it was a big time.
Yeah, things change. Hey, so when you're not at the gym, you're not competing, you're not coaching, you're not doing all the other things on the side, what are some of your hobbies, maybe outside of like training and performance?
So I like playing guitar. I like writing. I like drawing. I come from a very artistic family. My mom's an artist. My brother's an artist. I do like writing short stories and sci-fi. I like playing my guitar. I'm a cigar guy. I love having whiskey at a small bar. I like to read. But yeah, anything that involves art in any capacity, when I have time to really dive down, I really do enjoy that. So a lot of writing, a lot of drawing. I haven't painted in quite a while, and playing music is awesome.
All right. So if you weren't a gym owner and coaching, what do you think your profession would be right now? And if you got to pick, what sport are you doing next? Is it curling?
I love curling, man. I mean, have you seen the English female team? They won the gold medal. I love them. Which is another cool thing. You know what? That's a good. I think I would either be somewhere in the military, or some sort of first responder, whether it's PO or firefighting. I think I would have been, not only because I think I'd be good at the profession, but I have a lot of people that I respect and befriend in that. And I would have taken the dive. I would have done something like, either SWAT or got into like detective work or narcotics, um, or, firefighting and being like, SWAT medic and stuff like that. I even now it interests me. And I didn't pursue life in the military only because I had no guidance and my parents were like super scared of that. But the militant life and the military life has been something that has always fascinated me and something. So almost 100% sure would have been some sort of first responder role. I don't know. That probably would have prevented a lot of bad decisions and head tattoos, but I probably would have done that a while ago. I don't think I would have stayed in social work very long. As far as sports is concerned, I don't see anything yet outside of Highland Games and dedicating time to that. I did say that when I was in my early 40s or 40s that I would do a year of bodybuilding and may do a bodybuilding show because I would just be really curious to see what my fucking body would look like yoked. And I would like to just dedicate a year to the sport, not because it's a fad or anything, but I just think it would be really cool to see what my body can do when I'm not being, drinking every weekend and fucking hanging out. So, but as far as like performance sports, I think Highland Games would be where I like to see myself going. Outside of strongman, I don't see anything changing from that. A couple of rugby games here and there, but as far as a competitive level, yeah, that's where I would say.
All right. Hey, so I know this probably changes a little bit when you're getting ready for a different competition, but if you're setting up an ideal training day for you, what is your go-to training music and hands down best post-training meal look like?
Oof, I would probably I would play Verdruna and I would play Pertho because it's my PR song or anything out of their first or second album. I don't know if I would pick a movement would probably be lug, clean and press or deadlift, obviously. And then a post meal, there's a Colombian dish called bandeja paisa, which is a very kind of like for us in the country, a very farmers thing. It's got a pork tenderloin, fried pork tenderloin. You have a piece of steak, rice, eggs, avocado, beans, and a little arepa, and it's like this whole meal of a meal. It's my favorite meal in the world, and you cannot fucking beat that as a post meal. It is everything you want. It's got all the fucking food groups you want, and it's the best. Colombian food, which obviously in a biased sense, I think it's the best, but bandeja paisa post workout, you can't touch that, man.
Yeah, you're gonna have to write down that and the rest.
Yeah, I'm gonna fucking send it to you after this, dude. You're gonna be like, shit, that's no more than these motherfuckers have heart issues, man.
Hey, so last one I got for you. And you can kind of pick and choose which one you want. I know you've got a bunch of these, but favorite either under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory of yours?
Oh, that's a lot. It's hard to pick one.
Whichever one first comes to mind.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that one of my favorite, I guess, under the bar ones that I've ever had was the log lift of 2018. I had suffered that spine injury in 2017. In 2018, the beginning of the year, I tore my bicep, like I told you. The end of 2018 was Florida's Strongest Man. And I had trained my ass off to get back to that competition. And the first event was a max log clean and press. And I had trained heavily. I had trained my tricep like 3 weeks before it, but I was feeling very strong. And I hit a 315 log on my last attempt. And I hit it like it was nothing. Like, I think I could have hit 350 that day. I was so charged up and jacked up. And I remember that feeling. And I will remember we actually put it on a shirt because I'm like, it's like that, yeah, yelling and that roaring. And somebody caught it on a camera. Not actually somebody, one of my lifters caught it, like in a million different pictures, but she caught that in a very great pic. And I remember that feeling as like, I'm back. And I can see the roaring of the crowd and the face and the clapping and all the everyone's like, yo, Mike's here. Like, that feeling was something I had earned. I had earned that feeling so much, and it's emotional to talk about it, to be about it, because that whole competition was never supposed to happen again. And you know, when you really swim against the odds and you get there, and I hit 315, which I have not hit. I've not hit it since because of life or whatever competitively, and I fucking smoked it. Yeah, that's probably one of the greatest moments as far as an athlete. And I'll tag it on as far as coaching. I've had so many, and it's hard to pick one because then I think all my lifters would get pretty jealous if I don't mention all these things. But I certainly do remember going with one of my lifters, Vinny, to Vegas, and it was Worlds at the time, or Nationals, I believe, and it was one of those things where it all came down to the deadlift, and we made changes here and there. You know how you can make changes in the last two attempts, and he needed to get this after they had overloaded one of his benches, so he was a little gassed, and we put on a chip, like a 1.5 kilo, so that he would win by 2.5, but he needed to get it. And if he would not get this, he would have not placed third. He needed to get this lift, and it was a long day, and it was a tough dude. And he didn't even ask me. He's like, whatever's on the bar, I'll get it. And I remember that last minute change. I went to the table. I'm like, you know, go up 2.5 or something like that, or 1.25, because you're allowed to chip it or add a small plate. And they did it, and he got it, and it was a fucking grind. And I remember because he had worked, so he still does. Still one of my best lifters, but. It was so amazing to see him get that fucking lift, and that time, that work, and that travel to place top 3 in the nation, you know, fucking drug free, getting after it and getting that. I'll never forget that moment the rest of my life. That story, that whole day, the mishaps, the training, the injuries going into that, and he gets there by 2.5. That was like everything fell into place. Coaching, lifting, adrenaline. I remember looking at him and putting on the right song for his ear, and like, you know, that man-to-man that you have in that coach to lifter moment where like, you gotta get this motherfucker, like this is the time. And you see that guy do it. Oh, I get goosebumps, bro. It's one of the best moments, one of the best coaching moments of my entire fucking life. 2.5, bro. 2.5. And that's what he got, his top 3 in the third place. It was just amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're right. All that stuff, something earned like that is so much better. And that feeling, knowing that all your hard work is paid off for that one moment and you're able to put it all on the line and then be successful. That's awesome. And it's cool to see, like, I mean, as passionate as you are with your own like log, and like cool to see the community and everybody like embrace it and like get the picture and put it on t-shirts and everything like that. That's awesome. But to see you even more fired up as a coach, like you said it yourself, it's gonna take it over. And I mean, I'm a mediocre athlete, and I think I'm better at coaching, so I might as well lean into that as much as possible.
And I tell you, this is something I say wholeheartedly, that the best athletes don't make the best coaches. I will stand that. I don't care who you are. The best of the best athletes, they gave everything to be the best athlete, and somewhere along the line, they didn't gain the selflessness of the coach. I'll stand by it. You know, from Customato to fucking all the MMA coaches. I forgot the guy that does boxing too, that has Parkinson's. I forgot his name, but he does wild card boxing. You got guys that were great boxers, good boxers, not great, but good, are some of the best coaches in the world. And look at all these Jackson from the NBA. I will stand by that until the day I die. That, granted, I would love to be the best athlete in the world, but it takes a little bit of selflessness and a lot of sacrifice to be a great coach. I'm okay with that path. You know, I can still be a good athlete and great in some things, but the best athletes don't necessarily equate in any capacity to being a great coach. And I'll say that about strength too. I know some of the strongest people ever, that just because they're strong, they're shitty coaches. It does not equate at all in any capacity. It doesn't mean because you're a shitty athlete, you'll be a great coach. I don't mean that. But I'm just saying that sometimes people see somebody pull 800, like, oh, they'll be a great coach. Like, nah, Not really, because sometimes the selfishness it took to pull that 800, 900, it took away the skill sets that they needed to derive to be a great coach. Now, it doesn't mean they may not develop that later, but a lot of times they just move on to their professional life. Engineers, doctors, lawyers, bartenders, whatever. In that time that they could have developed that skill, it's not the same.
Exactly. Yeah, I think coaches that are probably not the best athletes, they have to go through a lot more struggle. It's not necessarily as easy for them, or they're not. Well, I think selfishness is a big part about it too, because if you can't shake that, and I think some of those athletes that are super good at what they do, they can't shake that selflessness. You have to be completely selfless as a coach. And if you can't turn that off and give that same amount of energy that you did for yourself to your athletes, then you're doing a disservice for them. And that's ultimately what you're supposed to be doing as a coach.
Right. 100%.
Dude, this has been awesome. Hey, I know you've got a lot of stuff coming up. You got your new 3-piece suit for the celebration and everything.
Yeah.
So enjoy that. But first, if people got questions for you, how can they reach out? If they're in the Miami area, where can they find the Battle Axe Gym and potentially get an invitation after talking to you first? What do you guys got going on right now?
Don't just fucking drop in. Just kidding. But not kidding. But so you can, it's pretty cool. You can actually just Google the Battle Axe Gym if you're ever in Miami. The best way to reach me is on Instagram at the Battle Axe Gym, or send me an email, thebattleaxegym@gmail.com. I'm really good at responding to that stuff, especially DMs and stuff like that. Send me a DM and tell me when you want to stop by. If you're in town, you want to get a drop in or just check stuff out or go have a fucking beer, come by. Miami's my town. I've been here my whole life. So welcome anybody to come by.
Hell yeah. Hey man, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. We'll definitely we're going to have to run it back eventually.
I would love it, dude. Yeah.
And we'll have to definitely get some cigars and some whiskey next time we're both competing in the same area.
Next year in St. Augustine, dude. Done.
Easy. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate everything. We'll keep in touch, and thanks for coming on today, man.
For sure, my brother. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.